Hey guys, how you guys doing? It's the last week of July. Is this the last day of July as well? No, there's one more day. Well,
Second
yeah,
last day.
second last day. And tomorrow is a holiday. We're gonna
Tomorrow
have
is a holiday,
a
yes.
very interesting extended weekend. Actually, it's not just this weekend that's long. I think is it a coincidence? Like next week is also a long weekend, right? You have Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday. I mean, the National Day holiday.
Yes, National Day holiday.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting 2 week long weekends. Well, it'll be good for us to. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff regarding Cloud Next, especially stuff like the Study Jam. I think the Cloud Hero challenge labs that you can try out as well. Like all these long weekends, definitely got a lot of things that we can do over here. Yeah, shall we get started?
Yep.
Okay, so as you guys can see over here, this is our 8th webinar where we're gonna be talking about highlights mainly from last week, week 2, and week 3 of the Cloud Next on Air 2020. Okay, so let's get started. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, we'll be covering most of week 2 and week 3, so productivity and collaboration. And then this week, which is week 3, is going to be on infrastructure. Okay, so there's actually a lot of content you can see over here. Last week alone for week 2, there was 27 videos. In week 3, there's 52 videos. So as I mentioned, yeah, we have a long weekend. There's actually a lot of exciting content. We actually would advise you, like, you can just filter it down. Maybe if you're more on the beginners level, you can look for the more beginners related tutorials or use cases that they will share. If you are more on the intermediate side, then you can actually look at, filter down for the more advanced topics and look at those. And yeah, we'll create all of this and let you know, what are the exciting stuff that we have in tow, that as mentioned in Cloud Next on Air. And before we jump into the main meaty stuff that we have for you today, just to share with you guys, this cheat sheet that we have over here is the shortened link you can see over here, GDG 8 on Air cheat sheet. It's a very interesting post made by some Google, I believe, and essentially it tells you or instructs you, like, what exactly you can expect from this entire event. For example, they'll tell you, like, Monday to Friday. Well, Monday, in fact, you can just ignore it. They're just telling you to get stuff done. But Tuesday to Friday, there's stuff in line, or rather, stuff they've prepared for you that you can watch every single day. Tuesday is the main day where they release all of the sessions in relation to Cloud Next. Wednesday, they'll actually start releasing the details of the Study Jam. As I mentioned, later we'll also talk about the challenge labs, or rather the quest later on. Yeah, and there's also some more localized, Thursday localized study jams starting around the time. In Thursday is at 11:30 a.m. So if you're free at the time, you can try that out as well. And then Friday, there's various talks by DevRel. So DevRel is like the developer relations team in Google. They have different people talking about the different expertise there as well. And yeah, you can check out this cheat sheet. They'll just let you know, what to expect. Especially now that, Cloud Next usually is like a 2-3 day affair. Now that it's spread over 9 weeks, what should you expect from this entire event? This blog post gives a very good rundown on what you should look out for. And which days you actually, maybe if you just want to participate in the study jams, you can just go for, let's say, these Wednesday and Thursday sessions. Okay, so today's main meaty stuff for our webinar is going to be for our Human RSS. So let's start off with our shiny new stuff. So what new things came out during the announcements for Cloud Next, as well as within, let's say, the release notes as well. Okay, so AppSheet. So let me talk a bit about this. So AppSheet, this is something that was introduced during one of the sessions in last week, week 2 for Cloud Next on Air. So that was part of their productivity team sessions. And this application, or rather this tool itself, is very interesting because it's essentially they advertise it as a no-code solution. But the thing is, how do you exactly build solutions with no code? I think some of you might also be aware of equivalent solutions like AppMaker. So if you have used AppMaker before, it's kind of like, I would say, okay, it's not like Blogspot. Blogspot, you still need to put in some HTML and stuff like that. App Maker is essentially this drag and drop UI where you have to drag and drop different elements into the main application interface that you want to surface for your users. And it also allows you to design certain schemas so that there's actually a database or data store behind the scenes that is abstracted away from you, because all you do is just design resources and the main pages. AppSheet, I would say it goes a bit beyond that, in that you can create applications based on, for example, your Drive sheets. Okay, so just to give a bit of overview of the presentation itself. Of course, you can also watch the session later on, but it's very interesting for companies that maybe you want to use this for your own internal workflows, not exactly for building your official or your production-based applications. So you can just create an application very quickly with something like a Google Sheet, as you see on the left over here. And going to appsheet.com, you can actually create a new application and reference that Google Sheet. And it's actually very interesting because it's not just the Google Sheet. Actually, they reference your entire Drive. And within a Google Sheet, you can actually put in, okay, it's a little bit blurred here, but you can actually see that this is a link to an image in Google Drive. So they actually take the context from your Google Drive itself and use it to create an application. In fact, within the session itself, if you watch it, right, the next screen, right, after you create a new application based on the Google Drive and the Google Sheet, is actually the creation of the interface already. At this point, you can actually see that they actually go through your Google Sheet and is able to create, or rather interpret and be able to make a very good educated guess on what application you can actually use it for. And it's actually very interesting as well. You can actually, they also allow, like they already created like an interface where you can update certain details. And it actually goes back into the Google Sheet. It's as if your Google Sheet itself becomes a data store. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, so if you have internal workflows in a company, this is something that you can use to improve your productivity. Instead of creating an ad hoc application, getting engineers to spend time here, you can actually use this to generate applications on the fly right away. So you can see over here, this is the shorter link. You can go over and visit this link. And okay, let's go over to the next slide. So we talked about this in the last few webinars. It was very exciting to talk about NTOS for GKE, especially in a case where we are no longer looking at just using it within the context of GCP, but also using it within AWS. And now they've announced on July 24th that it has gone into GA. So this is with, after their beta test, after ensuring that the tool itself can be used, widely across the entire audience. So if you have been waiting, for news that this to be released in GA, right, this is something definitely you can start picking up, and just start trying out. And some exciting stuff for application developers like me. So this is something actually, it was a bit earlier, this month, actually before webinar 7. This is something that I saw before, but it was highlighted by one of my colleagues. And I wanted to share with you guys in regards to point-in-time recovery. So there's already point-in-time recovery with Cloud SQL for MySQL, which is to, as in there's a set of steps you can follow to get that enabled. And now they have added it for Postgres as well. So it's a really exciting thing. Like having point-in-time recovery allows you to achieve a much more lower RPO, which is recovery point objective. So allow you to be able to have a larger fault tolerance for your application, be able to restore your application to much closer timings, where you are able to get application back online again, with the most relevant set of data, whenever there's an outage. And some of you might be asking, there are already current features in Postgres, in Cloud SQL, for example, the automated backup, or in fact, you can even make manual backups using Cloud SQL. So this is not referring to database dumps, but rather using that backup feature where you can just create the backup and use that backup to restore your database whenever. So isn't this kind of the same as point-in-time recovery? So we'll talk a bit about that later and how this actually complements high availability settings for Cloud SQL. Okay, so in order to enable this option, you can go to your database instance, click edit, and there's actually a checkbox that you can check to indicate that you want to enable this option. Okay, so just to talk a bit about the pros and cons, if you're using point-in-time recovery, there's a up to 7-day log retention period. So what this means is that as long as you enable this option, you can restore the state of your database, or rather create a new database instance based on any point of time within these 7 days where the logs were captured in regards to your database for Postgres. But it's not all it's not all good or all pros and with this one single feature. I think the counterpart is that because you are storing this log so frequently, right? And one of the issues is that these logs are actually stored directly within your own database instance, as seen from the documentation. So one of the recommendations that they make for you is that you should try to enable the automated storage increaser. So this is actually another binary option, a Boolean option that you can set for your database instances, where if your hard disk actually reaches a certain threshold, they will actually automatically assign or allocate more disk space for your database instance. Okay, so because this feature requires storage space directly on your database instance, this is something that they recommend. Or else the frequent writes to your logs may actually cause your entire system to go out, run out of this space, and you can't actually your users can't use your services anymore because you can't write new data, which can be a problem. Okay, so that's one con. And the other thing is this: we mentioned about a 7-day log retention period for point-in-time recovery, and it's only 7 days. This is the maximum. For Cloud SQL backups, the good thing is you can go beyond 7 days. As long as you create a backup at a certain period, you can actually retain it there. But of course, you need to pay for the extra amount of money, which is the storage required for each of these backups. But the good thing is that for point-in-time recovery, is that it's entirely automated. So for Cloud SQL backups, you can set it such that you backup once every day, and you can manually backup at a certain period as well. For the point-in-time recovery, it's automated to the point of basically instantaneous. You don't need to indicate when you want to manually backup. So within this 7 days period, you can have the logs that you can use to perform this point-in-time recovery at any point of time in the 7 days, which is in fact, I'll say in this 7-day period, you actually want to use this feature to perform a restore rather than using a Cloud SQL backup. So what about other pros? So the thing is, one thing I want to say is that for high availability configurations, you can use it to complement this point-in-time recovery very well in terms of helping you to minimize your recovery time objective as well as recovery point objective. So just now I mentioned about how point-in-time recovery can help you enhance your RPO. But for RTO, right, essentially for high availability configurations, you can allow your current database instance to go into, or rather to send the traffic into a failover instance, some backup instance, if there's some issue, with Google's infrastructure. So let's say in a certain zone for a certain region goes down, you actually go into a different zone for different area for that failover instance. So you will actually experience very low RTO for this because you are able to get your users directly in our database instead of having your services crash because they can't read from some database or read from some data store and write to some data store. Okay. So yeah, that's the pros and cons about point-in-time recovery. I think it's quite an interesting advancement for application developer like me when I'm using Cloud SQL for Postgres. And yeah, you can visit this link over here. Oops. Okay, so let's wait for the thing to disappear. It's not GDG8 PITR. So you can go over there and read the documentation for this new feature. Okay. Right, so Harizam, would you like to talk about this persistent disk?
Yeah, so this persistent disk is kind of a new thing that was announced, I guess, 2 days ago. I mean, the videos were released 12 midnight Tuesday for Singapore, right? Yeah, so one thing that they kind of mentioned, which is kind of interesting, is about the amount, the need for faster IOPS or faster storage, I suppose. I mean, because there are workloads out there that actually require really, really high throughput to storage. Maybe example could be logging systems, assuming that you don't use Stackdriver, or even custom databases that is not that it's not supported by Google. Maybe you are using like Cassandra or something, so you need like a large Cassandra instance, and that one requires like really high throughput. So generally, most companies out there, they generally use SSD, which is well renowned for to have like higher orders of magnitude of I/O operations. But then people kept pushing the bar, like, is it possible to provide higher and higher throughput? So I guess they kind of started to like separate out the number of offerings that like Google started separating out the number of offerings that could be provided. So I think right now, local SSD like is the fastest available. That's the one like on the server itself that is like some sort of like quick storage. I guess that's the most right one. But it's only meant to be a hot cache, because essentially if um, it's your workload can be replaced anytime, right? So that data can be lost anytime. So for more persistent storage, those are the four on the left, the four kinds of persistent disk, where the disk itself is not on the server rack. It's like somewhere else in the data center. The data needs to like flow there. So I think the ones that's available right now is I think just normal SSD. It should be under the balance profile. So that's the second one. I guess in the future, like more will be released. The more that's, I guess, the more crazy ones will be extreme and efficient. Efficient for like cost being like cheaper, and extreme is for really high throughput. So yeah, so in the case where you are seeking for like faster, higher throughput, this could be one place that you can like continue to look up for. But then, since seeing the timelines here, that means it will be like end of the year. Then you can start exploring. Then maybe only sometime next year, then you can actually use it. Where hopefully by then you'll be like GA. Yeah. So let's go to the next one. So going along the line of storage, I suppose. So I guess it's in line with what Yan was mentioning just now. So just now he was talking about Postgres and databases, and like point RTO, RPO and RTO and stuff. So this one is more of like, let's say if you are using disks and VMs and all, like you're not using like Cloud SQL. So what do you have here? So one of the interesting new features, like there has already been snapshots, so you can actually like go to Google Cloud on virtual machine, request for a snapshot. Yeah, it can happen anytime. But let's say in the case where, when you are running an application, there are some memory, some data that's in memory and it's not yet flushed to this. So imagine at that point in time you run your snapshot, not all the data for that moment of time is captured and persisted properly. So this kind of new feature that they introduced, I guess it's coming soon, but not sure when the timeline. Essentially, is providing you a hook to tell the application within the server like, hey, I'm about to run a snapshot. Do something to flush your data from RAM to disk, so that I can get the full picture of what you have. So in Windows, there has already been that functionality, but in Linux, they mentioned something about providing some sort of script hook. So it's like a pre, a, like I'm about to do a snapshot, so like a pre-snapshot script, I suppose. I guess you can call it that. But yeah, they call it script hooks here. So if you are interested in to make sure that all your data is all like correctly safe, I guess this is one thing that you want to take a look at. The next one, so also in the line of like, I guess a whole bunch of this is like time, it's all mentioning about backup recovery and disaster recovery in case of shit goes wrong. So you want to make sure that all your data is safe. So this one is not exactly disaster recovery, but more like okay, in the case where let's say you have some kind of database and you kind of want to take out the data, like you want to run some kind of expensive operation. Sometimes definitely it doesn't make sense to like run it on a production database. It'll be nice to like have it on like some sort of read replica where you can actually like do the dump on that read replica and prevent it from affecting the actual real instance. So rather than setting up that whole read replica and making it like making life difficult, now they have this feature called disk cloning where you can actually clone a disk within the same zone in under a minute of sorts. So like what you can have is you can have like some sort of like VM with a database inside, and as it's running, do the disk clone, and then from that you can run your database dump to do your backup of your data, whatever, or whatever you want to do with it. Or maybe you want to run a very, very expensive query that can potentially block up your whole production DB instance. That can happen anytime, but yeah. So that is like potential users of this case. And one of the interesting thing that they kind of note is they kind of mention is you can actually like clone the disk every 30 seconds is fine. Like you can clone as many as you want. And this is like kind of like temporal kind of clones. So they're not meant to exist for a long, long time. So that's why they are really, really fast, blazing fast. But the unfortunate thing is it has to be within the same zone. So if you want to like get the data out somewhere else, like maybe from there you want to do a snapshot of your clone, maybe that could be one way you can look at it. But yeah, I guess it's kind of like this whole thing is kind of in line with that theme of like making sure that your data is safe if you're right.
It does sound like a very good way of ensuring some RPO. Like if you what's that? As in because you are backing up this every 30 seconds, so you have the confidence to say that you can at least restore to the data 30 seconds before. In fact, in 30 seconds, usually you won't get much changes anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they did say the 30 seconds is like what you can potentially do, but I think it's kind of insane to like do this kind of like operations every 30 seconds. I guess it will cost money. I'm not sure how much.
For storage, you have to pay. Maybe if you do it frequently, probably you have to pay more.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And this is a really exciting. Wait. Oh yeah, this is an interesting one. I think we talked about this a few webinars before, and I think they're revisiting this again. All right. So talking about how you can actually use GLB inside GCP to actually do URL redirects and rewrites. So you can actually check the link out here for that session. And yeah, this enhances or rather makes the GLB itself, it gives it a bit more kick. You're able to do more things than what you are able to do before. Like previously, you could host a static website, allowing it to point to some bucket, for example, and use it as a service website, or you can use it interface with your Google Kubernetes engine, your cluster. It's actually pointing it to the different services in the cluster. So I think this one adds a bit more kick to your load balancer, instead of having to create like a small proxy, like some Nginx proxy within your applications or within your cluster, and having that do your redirects or rewrites for you. Why not do it on the highest level, which is your load balancer? You don't need to have to do those extra hops. You don't need to maintain a separate application for doing this.
Yeah, I guess I guess the more interesting one is HTTP to HTTPS redirection. Like, I think a couple
that's a common use case.
Yeah, I think a couple of people that I know, I think you yourself as well, you did mention this once before to me about how last time Google, like if you want to do that redirection, you have to do it on the server itself or the instance group. I generally don't play with VMs that much, so that's why I don't exactly feel this pain. But a friend of mine did mention about this being like the main issue for him when he was using GLB, and how he dislikes Google Cloud CDN because of this one missing feature. And then he was mentioning that the orange cloud out there already has this feature for a long time. How can Google Cloud not have this? And now I guess I can go back to him and say, okay, now it has. Now you can stop hating on this. You can stop being a hater.
Actually, I kind of think now that I'm looking at this, I feel like this can be argued in a way as a security feature. If you look at it, okay, as in, hear me out. So the idea is this: if you have a application server and you're exposing both port 80 and port 443 for your HTTP and HTTPS traffic, because you are doing the redirect on your server, you always have to expose that port 80 where you can have communication to and from your clients to you. That could potentially be a weakness point for your service, for your server as a whole. But having or being able to extract this portion into your load balancer, essentially you're allowing the load balancer do this redirection for you. I think it could be very interesting that your actual clusters or your services, you can actually just use the firewall, turn off port 80. You don't really need to let people listen on that port anymore. I mean, you don't need to use it for HTTP anyway. I mean, since it's already taken care of by this by the load balancer. It sounds quite interesting. I think I might actually want to explore it this way.
So it's like secure traffic from client to load to CDN to load balancer to server. Then after that it's your own business. But yeah, it's kind of secure traffic almost end to end already.
And you ensure your own application never exposes itself on HTTP. Could be interesting way to look at it, to do something like this. Okay, let's move on to the next part. So those are the shiny new stuff. I think there's a lot of new things that we talked about. Definitely more in the weeks to come. But this week is infrastructure. So I think the main theme so far has been a lot more on infrastructure. Let's move on to...
sorry, before that, I want to say one thing though. I want to say one thing. The thing is, like, what we cover is what we feel like is kind of the highlights to us. So probably there's a high chance that we didn't cover like the whole breadth of the conference. The thing is, like, most of the stuff that's coming out right now, at least in Google Cloud Next, are very enterprise-related features, and they are not even out for us to try. So a large portion of it we are not going to mention here because most likely it's either a solution that's too expensive for us to try, which we can't even talk to you about it. Yeah, like SAP HANA, there is a lot of talk about SAP HANA and how Google Cloud is trying to support that sort of workload. Or there's also a lot of talk about having like bare metal and VMware machines. But the thing is, not many people are into that. So this is kind of why we are not exactly mentioning this as part of the shiny new stuff. In the eventuality that we get a speaker that plays with such technology, I think we can like invite such speakers onto this webinar series and then like see how their experience are like. But yeah, like for both of us, I don't think we have the expertise, the budget. We have no budget to play with these tools. Yeah, to even talk to even talk about those features. Yeah,
I think a lot of what we covered today probably is more for the general audience. Application development, stuff like application development, where I think most people will actually get to touch those tools. Yeah, I think especially for, I think not just even say companies that are not big. I think even mid-sized companies will also get to use all of this. But yeah, those that are uber big will likely go for those tools on the extreme end. And probably, I think also very limited, not limited, but rather very extreme use cases in some parts. Yeah, like I think confidential VM, like as we talked about last webinar, I think that probably would be interesting for most people to learn, but probably not a lot of people will want to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they did mention one thing while they were announcing confidential VMs. Because of its nature, it's very, very difficult to monitor it. Because you don't, like, the whole thing is encrypted.
Yeah.
So even the host machine doesn't know what's inside this VM. That's the whole point. Like, you don't want the host to know what's inside. So now the question becomes, how does the host monitor it? How does the host convey what's inside the VM to you? So there's a whole different like problem. And right now, I don't think I haven't seen it on my console yet. I mean, it's just announcement. So I guess like one day, if people do have the budget and like willing to play, I expect a lot of problems for sure. Like there are because like the whole thing is like literally clamped down. I will expect like a lot of things not to work out the box. But yeah.
Okay, so shall we move to the next part? So
Yeah.
tips and tricks. Okay.
This one is kind of a thing that's kind of close to my heart because I got bitten quite a bit because of tests. I'm pretty sure like you write tests, right? Wei Yan?
Yep.
Yeah. So definitely, if imagine like you write like your whole bunch of test scenarios, and then like you run the test maybe on some build server like maybe Cloud Build or maybe on Jenkins and something. So initially it passed, like today passed, and using that same commit, after running it like 2 or 3 times later, it fails. Suddenly it fails randomly. So that is the whole thing about this whole test. Like it's being flaky. Like you're not sure whether it will pass 100% of the time. Like using the same configuration, if you didn't make any change to the code, you expect, and you write the test for that code, you expect that code, and then let's say it's 100% passed already, you expect it to be 100% passed no matter what, regardless of circumstance. Like you want to make sure that you don't have any false positives. Like you want to be able to trust the test. But imagine the test, like it can fail out of randomly or something.
Yeah,
So
I think sometimes when it's not written well, I think I've seen some cases where I'm not saying not written well, but if you're not isolating an environment, for example, you're making HTTP calls, or the network, sometimes the network will fail because in a CI, yeah, sometimes you can have network issues. Stuff like that, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean those things do happen, and that's the thing. Like it's so we kind of want to avoid such scenarios. So imagine what they presented in this video, like the link is at the bottom of the slide here, is about what will happen if it is like you have like 40 components as part of this like data center kind of deployment of sorts. And then like each component, the test, like assuming you take the test and then you run it like 100 or 1000 times, like it fails like 0.26% of the time. So like after you do all your calculations and everything, you can actually calculate out the overall how much, like essentially this whole flakiness number is essentially how much can you trust the result. So when we say the flakiness is like 10%, right? What essentially that would mean is if you run your test 10 times, you can't trust one of it. One of it is lying to you. So now when you look at the test and then you see that the test is pass or fail, there is a 10% chance that it's actually a false positive. Yeah. So the more components you have, the worse it becomes. And like if one individual component is very very flaky, essentially it will affect the whole environment, the whole like setup. So essentially, I guess one of the things that you can pull out of this is, if you are writing tests, try to isolate as much as possible, so that you can reduce that flakiness factor. So that you can trust that the test operates well for you. Because like having like it's good to have tests, but imagine tests like where you don't trust it. Like you run the test passes. Like I'm not too sure whether I trust the test, so I'm gonna run like 2 or 3 times, and then the third time it fails. Like okay, now I'm not sure whether to deploy this to production. So you wouldn't want to get into that scenario.
I
Yeah.
think there's also another dangerous mentality, which is that if you're so used to tests, like sometimes the test failing, and then sometimes you just replay it again because out of habit. Or sometimes I think even the more riskier side is that you deploy thinking that, oh, it's just like the same thing again, but it's actually a bigger issue than you thought it is. I do agree, yeah. It's this flakiness can build in complacency, in some sense as well, as you get used to it when it gets normalized, especially in a way.
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at the next one. Oh, this one is exciting. I think after you mentioned this to me before, I mentioned it to my colleague, and I think we all seem quite excited regarding this. This is actually kind of good for an application developer in some ways. In some ways. Actually, maybe more for infrastructure. Yeah. But can you explain a bit more about this?
Yeah, it's almost like I'm not sure. It's like this one goes against almost everything that I know of infrastructure. Okay, like when people build infrastructure, like okay, whatever I'm gonna explain now is almost like everything you can find in the video, which definitely explains it way better. But I'm gonna give like a general gist of it. So essentially, what most people do when they are deploying applications and all is, let's say you have client side, you have server side. You want to make sure that your server side, let's say you have like 3 copies of your servers, you want to make sure that the traffic to those like 3 or 4 servers is load balanced. So you essentially will place a component in the middle called a load balancer, so that you balance your traffic. So essentially, because of this load balancer thing, the load balancer can potentially be the bottleneck. Like people will like once you have a load balancer in place, people will generally like, oh, I think it's best to route your traffic to a load balancer, because load balancer is meant to do that. It's meant to balance your traffic and all. So load balancer, if it's not performing well, yeah, it will be horrible. So imagine the load balancer goes down, your whole infrastructure is gone. So I guess this whole approach that's mentioned here is kind of turning the whole idea of this whole of requiring the load balancer on its head. So what they were suggesting is, rather than so this kind of takes the idea from this set of components called Istio of sorts. So Istio, essentially what they do is you have a client, you pair it up with some sort of proxy, and then the proxy will do your networking for you, your networking traffic for you. But what if you have this proxy also take on the role of your load balancer? So rather than, because what you do in load balancer essentially just maps, like if you see this IP address, it just maps it to the destination IP. That's what it does. So imagine you take this logic and then you put it to this proxy. So I guess on the left, like if you see the Envoy proxy, if you take that logic, you put it in the proxy. So now your sidecar proxy can kind of do load balancer duty. So it's like double duty at the same time. So what if you can then have that proxy be controlled by some other component? So you have a central component that controls all these proxies and tell it how to map like all your DNS entries and everything. So now essentially you don't need your load balancer. Everything is kind of controlled by the proxy, and you can just tell your control plane, and control plane, your this like central component essentially controls the proxy, and yeah, you all the traffic will be routed on client side, I suppose. Yeah. So with that, I think recently there was an announcement where it's now possible to have gRPC itself to take on and be able to receive this information via this thing called the XDS protocol of some sort. I'm not not too sure about this. It's pretty new to me as well. So yeah, so gRPC itself, I think if you watch the video, it's by Kelsey Hightower, which is like pretty famous guy. What how he demonstrates that is just he imports like one Golang library, and then with that you have this capability to actually start reading information from via XDS API protocol, and that will kind of then you can kind of remove the need to even have Envoy in the first place. So like what the title of this like proxyless client side load balancer. So it's kind of removing the load balancer and then moving that load balancer into the component itself, and have that component be controlled by some central core component. So in this case, it's traffic director. So I guess it's kind of a interesting take on this. I'm not sure. Like, at the moment I saw this, I got a bit too excited, so I kind of showed it to a couple of people. Like all those couple of people immediately like, that probably won't go well, because like it goes against every experience that people have.
Somewhat breaks the preconceived notions. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of wondering, like, if, I mean, gRPC and all, like, yeah, it can do it. I kind of half hoping that it can be done even on the HTTP protocol, but I think that's asking for too much.
Yeah. I think if they can do it on alternate transport protocols, communication protocols, and I mean that would essentially be good, because be good in terms of for the DevOps team to be able to set up the services without having to care about this additional component, especially if you're looking at creating a service mesh, facilitating this communication between your services. But yeah, as it stands for HTTP and HTTPS, HTTP protocol is, you still need that sidecar proxy, right?
Yes, I suppose right now, yeah. I mean, gRPC is essentially like Google technology at the end of the day. So I mean, it's kind of why they are promoting it this way. Maybe, who knows? Maybe actually there's someone out there that already implemented this in HTTP or something.
They're called GHTTP. Oh, actually, but technically speaking, maybe even as a developer, I don't think I mean, assuming that all of this is within, like, this is a service mesh and they are not servicing outbound like client traffic, maybe you just need to have like one single application, let's say your web application that is servicing your users, communicating via HTTP, and everything else actually can be in gRPC. You can have like just an internal cluster, have them communicate with each other in this way. So you don't even need to have that sidecar per microservice that you have in a service mesh.
On a random note, I think recently I saw something about JavaScript being able to do gRPC as well. So which potentially means that it can be gRPC from the web. But yeah, I have never tried it. I'm not sure whether it works. But I remember seeing such a document.
At the end, like for example, like for browsers today, you still need to be able to fetch websites via the generic models that we have, which is in this case, we able to communicate on HTTP. Yeah. So you still need to have that as an entry point, I guess. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I guess it's interesting
go ahead.
to see how this goes.
Okay, so let's see what other tips we have next. Oh, this one was something I watched. So this is regarding. So this is one of the sessions that came out from the week 3 infrastructure sessions for Cloudnext on Air, and I thought it was really interesting. I mean, we have heard about infrastructure as code. The popular options out there, as you can see on the screen over here as well, Terraform. I mean, for people who are on GCP, you'll also be very familiar about Deployment Manager. Of course, you can also use APIs and client libraries, but that's kind of like meh, because I mean, if you can go with the declarative approach with Terraform and Deployment Manager, why do you want to go imperative? I mean, sometimes maybe for small things, yes, but for extensive amounts of infrastructure setup, usually you want to go declarative instead of imperative. And monitoring as code was interesting to me. This was something I never really explored before. I mean, setting up infrastructure, yes, but setting up alerts, setting up stack driver, the uptime checks, setting up alert policies and things like that. Those were something that, I know they were repeatable processes, but I haven't gone to the extent of exploring it. And here they have actually explored it. You can find the section on this link over here. And I think some parts of it, they actually went down into showing parts of the configuration they were using on Terraform in terms of being able to replay it and set up the uptime checks for their application. So it's quite interesting. We actually recommend you check it out. can sort of help you if you're already not employing something like this. It sort of complete your puzzle, in terms of being able to do infrastructure as code and having this as part of your infrastructure as code configuration. Being able to bring up both your ops, which is your actual infrastructure for your application, as well as getting up the monitoring, the other part of the picture where you want to be able to have that visibility on your application to know whether it's performing well or not. So being able to package all of this and deploying them all at one go is actually quite useful. Yeah.
I would say one thing though. So this monitoring code, I guess, applies a little bit more to Stackdriver, because I would imagine that if people out there, if they use Grafana and everything, right? So on setting up Grafana, you actually have the source code of your dashboards and your data sources as YAML files behind it. So during deployment, you get all those YAML files, gather them up, and then spin up your Grafana with all that configuration behind the scenes. And then when you try to click around Grafana, you only have a read-only Grafana kind of configuration setting and be able to read the data sources of it. So I guess you can say that this approach is kind of like that monitoring as code. But I always thought that monitoring kind of part of infrastructure, and as much as possible, codify it as much as possible. If everything can be as code, that would be the best. But there are like limitations to that. Like not everything can be controlled on the code level. But in this case, in Stackdriver, you have your API and everything. I hardly saw the Stackdriver stuff as part of Terraform, but now knowing that they are there, probably it might be a good time to start playing with that.
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting you mentioned about Grafana as well. I think those are probably, okay. For even for my company, I think we also have some form of Terraform or / deployment manager configuration for getting some parts of our monitoring mechanism. But I think, now that you mentioned this, I feel like it's the argument of managed versus self-managed. Like if you're using Stackdriver, which is managed tools, likely you would want to, or rather like things like this would be required for you to set up your monitoring. But if you self-manage a lot of these tools, probably that will really fall under part of your current infrastructure configuration.
Yeah. I don't know. Like essentially, I've only went through like two companies so far that have seen these practices. So it'd be interesting to hear what other people are doing out there. So if you follow other practices, maybe it'll be good to comment down in the video below on how your company does.
Actually, over here you can see it's quite small. The I think it's GAE, right? Google App Engine. Actually, that can be a very interesting use case where you're running serverless, it's managed by Google, and you definitely wouldn't want to look at creating your own self-managed monitoring system. So you'll just probably throw something like this on top of it. So on top of app.yaml, you can throw a like this Terraform configuration to set up your monitoring. Probably more for managed system, I guess. Yeah, maybe I'll try that and see how. Yeah, as Harizan mentioned, share with us in the comments. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to discuss and find out what's the best way to use these new things. Okay, so let's move on to the next. Okay, so that's all we have for tips. Let's talk about community content. What are the things that we could share with you guys today? And what's this regarding the behind the scenes peek, the Colossus, VM's the Colossus?
Yeah, so all the stuff that we see on Google Cloud Console, what we see are just VMs and BigQuery, those kind of stuff. So the thing is, right, there is a lot of magic that happens under the hood to make all of this happen. So the video, the link down there, they mentioned, they didn't reveal everything. They only mentioned kind of how these systems come about and how they are doing it. And the kind of one of the key takeaways is how most of these systems are all based on these three fundamental services. I think Borg was supposed to be their scheduler, if I'm not wrong. Borg is a scheduler to put where which workloads goes where, and then the workload will spin up and create your virtual machines there. It's kind of a weird concept because the stuff within Borg is supposed to be containers, but it's containers spinning up a virtual machine, which I guess is kind of astounding in a way. Spanner, which if you know is that big giant database that Google's kind of really kind of proud of, a relational database. So that's where you kind of store your data. I guess what they did at the end, I think sometime last year or something, they just exposed whatever the Spanner API out to the public. So now, kind of like if you're using Spanner, I assume you will use like the actual Spanner behind the scenes. So you're actually using like Google's raw tools. And then Colossus, I think, is one of their latest iteration of their file system. So their initial versions of their file system kind of inspired Hadoop. Colossus is kind of the latest iteration of it, which kind of abstracts out the various disks under the hood to form this like giant file system interface for the whole of Google to consume. But one of the more interesting things that kind of came out from the video is not only about these three giant fundamental services, but one of the things that they kind of want to do, which is so in order to fuel all this, they require physical drives. Okay, well, like let's say for Colossus, right? You need to have physical drives. So essentially, they need to kind of ensure and optimize to make sure that their drives are fully utilized, because like you don't want to have put a drive there and then it just sits idle. That's just a wasted amount of money, because drives have a limited lifespan. You put the drive there, it lasts between 2 to 10 years. So you want to make sure that you get full utilization of it. So they did talk about the monitoring that goes around behind it. They want to make sure that your drives are constantly speeding, constantly hot, and the utilization under the hood, the drive utilization is quite high. So you want to have like 90% filled up with data, or else what's the point? Because the whole point of the cloud is being able to reduce. They have like large amount of resources to be shared, and then you kind of have savings on the hardware level. Like you don't want to have all this extra space lying around. So one of the things that they happen to do is they can measure like spindle workloads between drives, and like if one drive spindle workload is way higher than other drives nearby, right? They'll start to migrate the hot data to other drives so that they can share the workload together. So yeah, it's like the level of optimization that they do in order to make sure that all their drives have high utilization, high consumption. It's kind of astounding. Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to the next community content. So this was something this is one of the sessions that came out from this week's infrastructure sessions as well. And this was actually one of the more basic videos, but after going through it, I felt it was really good because they went through the sort of prim and proper properties that you need to look at, or the different principles that you should look at in terms of doing a migration from a different infrastructure over the GCP. Things like making sure you're getting the correct processes or your workflows across, getting your services across to the new environment, and then taking care of the bigger, the elephant in the room, which I'll say is the data. Because I think out of every single migration I've done, I think from experience as well, usually moving your services, right, especially if you have containerized it, is the kind of like the easier parts already. So after moving it across to a different infrastructure, usually the problem is actually, let's say if you have your own self-managed database, how do you move it to GCP? How do you even if you're moving from VM to VM, right, that will still require some time, because now you need to make sure that both applications reading from two different databases are both behind some load balancer, and then you need to switch your DNS after you manage to completely migrate the data over. But if you want to reduce downtime, you also need to make sure you are able to write to not just one single database but both databases at the same time. And I think they cover some of this minor aspects here and there, discuss about how they got around, for their own problem, where they sort of dog food a little bit, where they move their employees, a small segment, or the shard that contains, let's say, just the employees over first, and then progressively look at, moving other shards, which is other groups of users. So they can actually find out, early what problems they face, what problems the users face when they will move over, so they can fix those before getting the main group of their users over. So it's quite interesting. Actually, I would very much recommend you to check out this link over here, GDG8 Fitbit. Yeah, so this one is just going through more of what they discussed during the session. So you can check it out in that video. Okay, so going to the last part. So what do we have in store for you in terms of what you can learn? Especially in the case of CloudNext, there's so much exciting stuff going on right now. And not just the new tools, the new features, but also programs. How can we leverage on these programs to help us learn more about GCP? And yep, I think we've talked about this way too much. In fact, the entire webinar today has been about this, CloudNext on Air. And if you have been checking out the week on week on the sessions on CloudNext on Air, you will also know that there's this thing called the Learning Hub. You can check it out in this link over here. But every single week, they will actually put in the relevant links to the different learning opportunities. Over here you can see there's Cloud Study Jams. You can look for opportunities to earn a skill badge on Quick Labs. I think the more exciting one is if you like gamification and earning badges in Quick Labs, you can actually go for the Cloud Hero game. You can see over here it's in purple. Actually, I clicked it as well. And yeah, I think this is also part of the process to help you prepare for certification. You can also look at booking your certification examinations based on the things that you have learned in this period. And yeah, if you're interested in the challenge labs or the quest for the Cloud Hero quest, you can actually go over to. So I'm going to show the link later on, but you can see over here that for the Cloud Heroes, this is the third week. You can actually use this code CHNEXT03 to join. The game for the first week, so 2 weeks ago we talked about this as well. Yeah, if you have joined before, you have finished the labs, you actually get a badge. Week 2 actually they skipped it, so you don't need to worry about last week. But yeah, if you're interested in Quick Labs, do check this out. The badge is as you see over here. Once you have finished all the labs, they actually give you the badge right away. I've not seen anyone add to LinkedIn before, but if you're interested, you could do that. I guess that's part of like the skills that you can put under your LinkedIn profile too. And yeah, this is part of what I mentioned earlier on. If you want to look for the entry point for getting to this page for joining in fact, you can see over here there's limited spots, and this is only over a course of one single week. So once we reach next week at 4th of August, this lab will actually finish. So you can't actually join it and get a badge of that. So I would actually encourage you, with this long weekend, there's 11 labs in here. Do check it out and finish it before then. There's a few challenge labs to sort of if you're not familiar with certain things, you can also go around and ask other people questions. Ask us in the comments as well in our Slack channel. If you have issues with this challenge labs. And yeah, I would very much encourage you guys to try this out and earn this badge. And yeah, if you're interested in you can see over here, I think this is something actually we've been sharing week on week. So you can actually get some free Quick Labs for a certain month. You can go over here, Google goo.gle. So this is their shortened link, Cloud Training. Okay, so once you sign up for it, they should give you the Quick Labs code for 1 single month free of using Quick Labs. And yeah, so that's all we have for you today in terms of Human RSS. We hope that you have enjoyed a lot of this content, the new stuff, the community content tips, as well as this week's highlight on the different things that you can sort of participate in and learn from. We're going to be continuing on this trend for our next webinar, which will be recapping week 4 and week 5 different materials that come out in these few weeks. So watch out for this session to come. So yeah, 2 weeks from now, 13th of August, 7:30 to 9 p.m. And so yeah, before we end off, just to mention, today we wanted to very heavily feature what was covered, during Cloud Next itself. But yeah, if you are interested in joining in our different webinars or even in our sister group, GGG Singapore, in talking about different technologies, be it in the cloud, Android, Chrome, so on and so forth, do sign up in this link and let us know the topics and what you are excited to talk about. There might be something that you have created at work and you're excited to share with the community. Definitely we will encourage you to do that. And yeah, various social links. We have Facebook with our Meetup and Slack. Facebook is very important. We put a lot of exciting stuff, news that we find out over there. We periodically update there as well. And if you have any questions, you can also ask on our Facebook group. Meetup page, also very important. The Meetup page where you can subscribe for our page and basically see all the new events to come. And yeah, Slack, we've used this since Modular GCP a few months ago where we had this huge quick labs campaign. And yeah, you can join in there and talk to other guys within this Slack channel as well. And yeah, so that's the end of today's webinar. We hope you enjoyed this format. Then we just crossed over slightly over 1 hour. And it has been quite interesting because, with the content we have from week 2 and week 3 of Cloud Next, there's so much stuff to share. And as Harizan mentioned earlier on, this is just the curated stuff. There's 27 videos in week 2 and 52 videos in week 3 of the Cloud Next on air. And this is not counting the DevRel programs that they put across the week, as well as the study jams and many of the other exciting stuff that they have in store for us for Cloud Next on air. So in this long weekend, I would very much encourage you guys look through the different things that they have in store for us. That this 52 different videos. There's definitely for data people, for DevOps people, for application people. There's definitely different things in store for us to watch over there. And yeah. Thanks for watching today's live stream, or if you are looking for this from the future, we hope you enjoy the content we've created here. If you like this content, make sure you like, share, and of course subscribe to our channel. We definitely have these webinars every 2 weeks. If you're on Facebook, make sure you like this video as well. And yeah, with that, I think we've come to the end. Yeah, Harrison, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
I would say the next 6 weeks, I guess 6 weeks, yeah. The next 6 weeks will be probably a more exciting one. Less on the infrastructure, more on AI, serverless, yeah, and databases now. But yeah, looking forward to all the new upcoming content.
So yeah, I think we have reached the end today. Yeah, I think it has been a lot of exciting stuff. Do try out those tools that we have talked about. I think stuff like the app sheet has been really interesting. I think that one you can actually use it right away. Create a Excel sheet on your drive and just load it in and see how it works. I think you can recommend it to your own organization as well to get started with very quickly creating applications like that. And yeah, there's also all the other exciting stuff. And yeah, with that, I think this is the end of today's session. So we'll see you guys 2 weeks from now. Bye.
See ya.